Everybody doing? This is Chopping It Up Hardcore with Hal Capone, discussion number 37, Easter edition. Tonight I have a super special guest, Will Killingsworth from Orchid, Ampere, Failures, No Faith, Bucket Full of Teeth, Laceration, owns and runs Dead Air Studios, owns and runs Clean Plate Records, just like the godfather of hardcore Screamo. Busiest man working in this scene by far. He does so much for the community, and I can't wait to talk to him. I actually recorded at Dead Air Studios a couple times with a few of my older bands, and just super stoked to talk to him. So I hope everybody had a good Easter. I know it's crazy having to talk on Easter. I know some people don't really celebrate it and some people do, but he should be on in a couple minutes, just prepping and getting ready to talk to him. But I'm super stoked and I can't wait to talk. So hope everyone's safe, wearing their masks. Should be a fun talk, definitely. I know Will doesn't do too many of these talks, so I'm just honored to be able to speak with him tonight. Hopefully, for a little while. And like I said, I've recorded with Will. I've recorded Ampere and Orchid and Bucket Full of Teeth. And those are the videos you've been seeing this week. Just trying to get everybody pumped for the talk. So just waiting on Will right now. Should be here any second. Nat, how you doing? Matt, good to see you again. Ron, listen to Ron's podcast. A new one comes out tomorrow. Must listen. Some good shit right there. He's going to start getting into some crazy stuff as the week goes on. He's doing some real good fun stuff, so please listen to his podcast and his friend Matt's. Matt, I haven't watched Godzilla vs. King Kong. I want to. I just got to find the time to do it. Here's Will right now. Will, how you doing? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I know it's Easter.
Sure.
I know it's Easter, and some people celebrate it pretty hardcore. We had Easter dinner earlier, so I didn't know if you were too busy, but I really appreciate you taking the time out to speak with me.
No worries. Not an Easter guy, so.
Yeah, some people are and some people aren't. I didn't know. So. I saw Tom Schlatter was eating pizza for Easter, so I like I said, I know some people don't celebrate it and some people do. I have young kids, so they did an Easter egg hunt outside this morning and stuff like that. So try to make it special for them.
That's cool.
But like I said, once again, thank you. And usually when I start off talking, I just try to find out how you got into hardcore and punk when you were younger, what drew you to it, what age were you at, and if you were listening to anything before you started listening to punk and hardcore, what kind of music was that?
Yeah, it's probably a complicated or long story, but I guess I had sort of been into hair metal and whatnot, when I was maybe in middle school or a little younger, and I got into somehow I heard the Ramones and had a Ramones tape, and and then maybe a year or two after that, no, I guess that was end of grade school, and then going to middle school, I met a friend who was into the Dead Kennedys and Bad Religion and that kind of stuff. So I was sort of I got into those bands, but I didn't really know I just sort of thought they were just like other bands. I didn't really know about like punk as like a whole thing, or like, I was just kind of like, these bands are cool, and I don't know, they sort of spoke to whatever sort of angst I had at the time. And then I was living in California at that time, and then from there I moved to Alabama for like 10th grade, and that's where I met a friend who was into like sort of like more current bands, or was, sort of knew what was going on. There was like a record store. He'd be like, oh, check out this band. And that's sort of when my eyes opened to like, there's this whole like sort of punk hardcore thing that, like, it's not just like, I don't know, Dead Kennedys aren't like Nirvana or something, like,
Yeah.
and I sort of started piecing it together from there, I guess.
Now, were
Maybe
you? I know. Some people got into it like skateboarding. Were you? Did you skateboard when you were younger?
I was not a skateboarder.
Yeah,
No.
me neither. I think me and you were like the only ones that didn't skateboard. And
I stood on a skateboard, and that was hard for me. So that's about as far as it got.
now with hair metal bands, what kind of hair metal bands was it? Like the glammy hair metal bands like Cinderella and Poison, or was it more like towards like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest? And
No, I had like a couple of tape. Like I had one Iron Maiden tape and one Judas Priest, and I was sort of into them, but I was more into like Guns N' Roses, Poison, Skid Row, Cinderella, all that kind of stuff.
yeah, and you were born in Massachusetts, though, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And then you moved to California, and then moved to Alabama.
Yeah, my father had moved to California a couple of years before I moved out there, and I moved to live with him. And then he was originally from Alabama, and him and his wife at the time decided that they were both from Alabama, and they decided they wanted to move back there. And so I just sort of went along with that ride, which wasn't that exciting at the time, but I mean, in California, we were living in like a pretty rural area, so it wasn't like I wasn't living in some mecca of like exciting shit.
Yeah.
So,
so
it worked out. It worked out.
So when you moved to Alabama, that's when you started Laceration, right?
Yeah, that was probably like 3 years or so after, or maybe on like my third year living in Alabama.
Yeah. Now, were you in other bands before Laceration, or was that kind of like your first real band that you got into?
No, there's a couple unmentionable things before then that my same friend that got me sort of into stuff, that was current and whatnot, he was the one who was like, oh, like, do you play guitar? Like, do you want to play music? And I was like, I own a guitar, but like I barely touched it. I didn't really, I would pick it up like, I don't know, not very often, and was not very good. So he was like, well, we should just play. Like, you don't need to know how to play or whatever. And so we started a bad band, and then there was a couple bad bands probably after that. And then Laceration, which was, I don't know, is it bad?
No, I like Laceration. I think a lot of people like Laceration, honestly.
That's cool.
One of my friends was like, that's Will's best band, so.
That's cool.
Yeah. So was there actual scene in Alabama? Because you don't hear too many like bands coming out of Alabama. Was there like actually like a punk hardcore scene in Alabama at the time?
There was. I mean, it was really small. And yeah, I mean, like there were not many shows or anything like that, but there was, I think it had only been open for like a year or so before I went to it, but there was a record store that opened up. There was like, it was basically in like the entryway of this like, I don't know, like erotica shop or something. And this kid who was also in high school somehow got them to like rent him this, like 5x7 space where he just had like 6 or 7 like bins of records, and they were open like after school hours, kind of like, it was a very strange thing that existed for 2 or 3 years. But like he had all this cool shit, and my friend and I would just go there and just like whatever, like we would just hang out there for like an hour and like listen to music that they were playing and like check out records and stuff. Um, so that like window of things happening sort of made it, I guess, enabled me to sort of like find this gateway into stuff. Um, but outside of that, I mean, there weren't like a ton of kids, there weren't like a ton of bands. There was like a couple bands and stuff, but like I didn't have like a lot of friends that were like into punk and hardcore stuff at all.
Yeah. And I feel like back then in the early 90s to mid 90s, it was a lot of metalcore, hardcore, and you know, kind of tough guy hardcore everywhere. You know what I mean? With bands touring and stuff like that, you didn't see, well, I didn't see too much of the smaller punk shows. You know what I mean? Because up here in Boston, it was constantly just like tough guy shows. You know what I mean? I don't know how many times, which I love Overcast and stuff like that. But I mean, that was like every single weekend. There was like a Die My Will, Overcast, Dead Eyes Under show, like constantly. And that's the kind of hardcore that what like I was listening to like in the mid 90s. Was that kind of similar back then?
I was in a different world, and like honestly, I didn't even. There was one band from Atlanta that would play in Birmingham that I saw a couple times. This band Active Faith that wasn't. I wouldn't call them tough guy, but they were more in like the chuggy hardcore world. But honestly, the whole time I lived down there, I was pretty unaware of like I had heard Strife and I was into Earth Crisis and whatnot, but like the sort of like tough guy aspects of it, like I was completely unaware of until I moved up to Massachusetts, back to Massachusetts for school, and went to some shows here and was just kind of like, oh, like I thought this shit was like mainly for like nerds like me, like not people who were like muscly. But so I don't know. I really was not that exposed to it, and I was also mainly into like, well, I guess I had kind of diverse taste in terms of punk, but I was mainly into like the crust stuff and grind and like that sort of world, which definitely, didn't really have a high crossover into tough guy.
Yeah, it's true.
But like I said, I was into Earth Crisis and Converge and stuff like that at the time. But
yeah, and Laceration is on the crustier, like fast punky side, kind of, the kind of stuff that you released first on Clean Plate Records, in that vein. You know what I mean? Kind of like,
yeah, I was going for like kind of like I was super into like the Slap a Ham stuff and whatnot, and I don't think I'm not sure Laceration quite like fits that mold, but that's sort of like, those are my influences.
Yeah,
for sure.
And the other guys in the band, did they kind of have similar influences too in Laceration, or was it like a bunch of different people, a bunch of different likes for music?
Well, really, Laceration was like a project band. The other bands I've been in before that were like actual real bands that were, real. But we practiced, and some of them played shows, and not many because there weren't that many shows, and we weren't playing even many of those not many shows. But Laceration was just a total project of pretty much just me and my one friend who I actually started the label with too. But it was like I basically just wrote all these riffs and song ideas and sort of kept a notebook full of these ideas. And then we would get together like one day and just like record drums. He would play drums. I would do everything else. We would record drums, and I think I played bass live with him, but I can't remember honestly. But it was either bass or guitar, and we would record like 30 songs, and then whatever, he would learn them on the spot. He'd never heard any of them beforehand. We would learn it, record it, move on, and then like later I would add other instrument which was just bass because I was just doing it on 4-track. I couldn't have 2 guitar tracks, and I would do vocals, and then really I think there was either 2 or 3 recording sessions for that, and I think there was three. I think the first two were like 20 to 30 songs each, and then the last one was like my parents were out of town for the weekend. I had like literally like 100 songs or something, and we recorded like somewhere between like 70 and 90
Wow.
songs that I just would like slowly add vocals to and like slowly release. And there's like a ton that are not released just because there are so many songs.
Now, do you still have that in your vault, the songs that didn't get released?
Yeah, yeah. Some of it is a 7-inch that I was supposed to put out, and then um, sometimes your own projects are like the easiest to put on the back burner, and that sort of just kept being moved further and further back on the back burner, and then just has never come out.
So what year did you move back to Massachusetts to go to school?
That was 96.
96. And then Orchid started fairly right after that?
I think Orchid started near the beginning of 98, if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head.
I thought the cassette demo came out in 97, though.
I don't think so, because I started school fall of 96, and then 96, that whole school year, I couldn't find anyone to play music. Or, like I had a couple of friends that like played music, but like I didn't even necessarily really have like an idea for a band, but like, nothing seemed to fit. And I think it was at the end of that school year, we tried one practice with Jay and myself and a couple other friends, and it was okay, but didn't really work. And then the next school year, starting 97, I don't think it was as quick as, by the end of that year that we were able to get everything together and be playing. I could be misremembering by a couple of months, but I think it still took a little bit of time to like get everything going. I think it was the end of that second school year where it was sort of like we got things going. But either way, it was in that from, like fall 97 to spring 98 or something that is where things got together.
Yeah. And was Jay playing? Jay was playing guitar in All I Ask, right? And so I was talking to him, weeks before, and he said that you asked him to be in a band, and he was like, oh, like assuming that he would play guitar, and you were like, no, I want you to sing. And he was just like, oh, all right, and he said that you guys, you were influenced by a lot of German hardcore to like kind of like the style that you wanted to do. Is that correct? Like kind of like the Sistral, Acme type of stuff.
Yeah.
He said that you were like showing him that kind of stuff in a lot of grindcore and kind of like opening his eyes to different stuff. Is that correct?
That's definitely correct. But maybe he left out, he sang for a band before Orchid. It was, the name it's so close to my mind, but it was a chuggy hardcore band, and it was with the drummer and one of the dudes that we tried practicing with at the end of my first school year at college. That didn't really the vibe didn't quite work out, but yeah, he sang in that band, and I was taking a studio class at the college, and it was not really recording, but it was kind of very basic, but it also meant that you could use the shit in the music building, and which was an 8-track, and you had access to that and to a room that people could play as a band in to record separately. So basically I was sort of the friend who was kind of friends with them, and help them record their demo. And so in doing that, I was like, whoa, Jay has a really sick voice, note. So that was why I think that I was I should ask this kid to sing in a band.
And it definitely worked out for sure.
Yeah, it did work out. He
Definitely.
did have a thick voice.
And I know Brad
I think
was
I think the band name was Fall Between.
fall between.
Fall
I don't know if
Between.
he mentioned that when I was talking to
Yeah,
him. Maybe on purpose. He
yeah. They had some stickers. They were up around the college. They played a few shows. Fall Between.
fall between. I'll have to ask him about that. I know Brad was playing with you guys earlier when Orchid first
Yep.
started. How did Jeff get into the mold, and why did Brad leave at like earlier on?
Sure. Well, so we had done, we done a few recordings with Brad, and we recorded Chaos is Me and put that record out, and went on tour that summer with that record. And then basically Brad was at school with us, and Hampshire, where we went, is like a pretty laid back school. It's very easy to do as much or as little schoolwork as you want and sort of coast by. And I think, and some people that work, some people it doesn't work. And I think Brad was like leaning a little more towards like not doing as much work as he probably should have been, which, I've been through those times. That's fine. But I think his parents were like, maybe you should come home for a little bit
Yeah.
and like reassess or whatever. So basically he moved back. He was also from Alabama, although I didn't ever meet him when we lived in Alabama. So that's a weird side note.
Yeah.
3 members of Orchid lived in the South. Jeff Delaney was from South Carolina. But anyways, so Brad had to leave, and we were all kind of like, the record just come out. We just done our first U.S. tour, and I think we were all just kind of like this is pretty important to us. Like we kind of want to find a way to keep doing this. So Jeff was kind of like the logical, I don't know, like person to fill in or take that place. He was friends with Jay forever, and we knew him, and he was clearly into being in bands, wanted to be doing shit, like had a similar drive that we did. So it was just kind of the logical choice. He was living in Boston at the time, so that was the only slight step back, which is we were no longer an all at that time Western Mass band was
Yeah.
So we had to work around that a little bit. But I'm sure that there were some things that maybe that was a hindrance for, but I don't honestly remember any time that it was even an issue. So he was definitely dedicated to driving out and practicing and hanging out in my room and learning riffs and working on songs. He was definitely full steam ahead. So
Now, on that first tour with Chaos is Me, what was there any real nice memories of that tour that you remember? Maybe a few things that were kind of opened your eyes to saying hey, this band might be turn into something good, and obviously you probably had no idea that it was going to blow up like it has now. I mean now in
right.
2021. You see a million Chaos is Me memes, like the brand, the Screamo.
I don't know if I've seen a million, but
I mean, it's a ton.
I've seen a few and roll my eyes at them. But
did you know that honestly, there's so many people. Like Nick Sadler said that you were, the king when I posted the thing, and Jay said legend. You know what I mean? People throw out these words. So did you think that Orchid would blow up like it did, or were you just just out there having fun and you had no idea that it would be, such a thing?
I mean, I think we were all driven, to whatever, express ourselves and sort of follow this, but I don't think any of us thought that it would be whatever it is now. I don't think that we certainly couldn't have predicted that or, what have you, or, but and that tour, which was, I think it was our third tour, but it was our first like full US, like to California
Yeah.
and whatnot. I can't like, I'm trying to think if there was definitely like some shows on that were, I feel like pretty good or sizable, but I mean like we were still like on that tour, and most of the whole time we existed as a band, we were like a pretty small band that like, you know, we didn't have like a ton. I mean, the tour went well. It was, you know, it was good, you know, whatever. We were happy, but it wasn't like a crazy tour with like insane shows or, you know, like,
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. The first time I saw,
you know, we were playing like house shows with like 30, 40 people at it or something, which was great.
Yeah.
It was cool. You know, but, and shows with far less people at them too, but you know, like whatever. I think that making the record, I had this sort of feeling of like, this is like the best thing I've like done, or, you know, like feeling the momentum of it and whatnot. But even that is like hard to like, whatever, you know,
yeah,
like,
like
you know,
Cage. Yeah.
like just because I'm excited about this or feel like this is going well doesn't mean anyone's going to like it. Like I had put out enough records to know that whatever, like, I don't know. It's not like Laceration was really popular or, you know, like, I don't know.
No, I totally understand. I mean, the first time I saw Orchid, it was, you know, I think it was probably less than 50 people, but then the video that I took from the Tin Can Full of Dreams Fest, there was, I mean, the crowd is crazy. Everybody's pushing into the band and stuff like that. And that's why I say over the years, it's just grown into this like following. And I think if you guys ever, I'm not trying to say if you ever got back together again and did a reunion tour, I'm saying if you did, it would be insanely huge, you know?
Yeah.
So
I'm
not pushing that, but I'm saying like if it ever happened.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, yeah, I don't really like reunions, so that's my feeling on it. And I don't think any of us are that interested. But you know, I don't know if you mentioned it to Jay, but I don't know if he mentioned the Ritual Mess record, but that's got 3 of us on it. So
yes, we did talk about that. Yeah, which is a great project, and I know it was kind of just like a studio project, and you guys didn't play out at all. But the record and there was something else that came out that you guys did too, right? It wasn't just the record; it was
I'm losing you.
It was the record, and then there was something else, right? That came out for Ritual.
We did a 7-inch, and then we did an LP that I think it came out like a couple years after the 7-inch.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Now, what were your thoughts on that project that you did? I thought that was great having 3 of you guys back together again, and you know it was almost like Orchid times 2. You know what I mean? A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I mean that project was fun. It was kind of just like, so Ampere had toured to Australia, and our friend James, who's in Ritual Mess, he was in the band that we were touring with, and he's just a great dude. And he was coming over to the US, and he was like, you know, like, do you want to like hang out? What, like, can I spend a few days like at your house, whatever? And he was like, yeah. And it was like, do you want to like do like some sort of band project or whatever? So it was just kind of like was this rough idea of doing something kind of like Gravity style, hardcore. And the 7-inch was just him, me, and Andy, the drummer of Ampere, just doing those 3 songs. And they kind of sat for a while, and then it was kind of like maybe we should figure out like someone to sing on them or whatever, you know, and then asked Jay, and I think that took a little while to come together. I can't remember, but anyways, it came out cool, and we were kind of like all into it, and put it out, and didn't really think too much of it after that. And then James came over. Maybe actually, I'm trying to think about how it came together. I think so. Whatever. I mean, it took like 4 years probably from when we were first like got together and recorded those songs and when it came out. And then it came out and we were like, yeah, this is cool. People seem to like it. And someone was like, maybe we should do like an LP or something. And he was like, yeah, whatever. And then James was like, well, if you guys like want to do it, like I would come over to the US again and like spend some time. And it was kind of like, well, okay, like if you're willing to come over, like, sure, like, why not? So that was kind of the impetus for doing the LP. And then I hit up Jeff Garlock about playing bass on it because on the 7-inch tracks, I think I played bass on 2 of the songs, maybe James played on 1, but it wasn't really written with bass. And it kind of like, well, if we're gonna do an LP, like maybe it could be cool if bass is like a little more interesting and like, you know, Jeff again just seemed kind of like a logical point of being like he's someone who can just like drop in, learn like super proficient, and like, you know, like just come up with cool shit like that. We don't even have to like think about like what should the bass do, you know, like it's like a week later and like maybe the bass should play this, or you know, like for like 10 songs that's not like that fun. So yeah, that worked out, and we had sort of gotten together and we practiced those songs I think for like 3 days, the 4 of us without Jay, and then Jeff had to go home and we kept working and like basically wrote a couple more songs and then recorded the other songs. And then kind of like, that wasn't too much after that Jay came and did vocals. He's like a machine and did like, I feel like he did all the vocals in like 3 to 4 hours of like one day.
Wow, no kidding.
It was like he stopped by like after lunch and like, you know, by like 4 p.m. was like on his way, like on his merry way. It was just like, yep, still got it.
Yeah, no kidding.
But yeah, so, and then, yeah, that record came together because we sort of, whatever, we were sort of driven to kind of like put it together and whatnot. That came like together quicker in terms of like beginning to end than the 7-inch did. But after that, there's been like vague discussion of playing shows and stuff, but it's like James still lives in Australia. Andy now lives in France, so we're kind of like we're kind of more fucked. So I can't really imagine it ever happening at this point. But you know, maybe the stars will align. Who knows?
Now going back to Orchid, were you the one that got in touch with the bands that you did the splits with? I know you guys did splits with Encyclopedia of American Traders, Pig Destroyer, Combat, Red Scare, Jerome Stream. Was that you reaching out to them, or I know kind of the story where Pig Destroyer, you set up a show. Was it you set up a show and then after the show they were like, hey, do you want to do a split like when you guys first started, or like how did that come about? And was it you that like got in touch with these bands to make these amazing splits? Because all those splits are awesome.
Thanks. Some of them. So like the Pig Destroyer thing, I had known Scott Hull for a while beforehand, and like our band, other bands to have a split, like Laceration has a split with Agoraphobic Nosebleed.
Yes. And
I put out an Agoraphobic Nosebleed 7-inch on Clean Plate. So like Scott and I were pretty good friends at the time, and like you know, I was setting up shows at Hampshire, and like I don't even remember, like we were talking one day on the phone or whatever, and he was like, yeah, he had this new band, and I don't even know if I'd ever heard Pig Destroyer before. I mean, I had the demo, and maybe they had the demo. The demo was recorded, and I had the tape before they played that show at Hampshire. I don't remember, but anyways, they came up, played the show, which, if I remember, I mean, I think it was within their like first 10 shows or something. Like I think it was like their first weekend, and it was I think it was the first Orchid show. It was either the first or second. And so whatever, we played together. We were like, this was cool. Hey, like your new band's cool, man. Yeah. You know, and it was just like, wow, we could do like another split of our new bands, you know, like just some random thoughts like that. And that was pretty much that. It was pretty easy, and because we were already friends, already communicating about other things. And then Dave Allison, who put out that record. I had put out a record by his band. He had put Laceration on like a comp. Like we were in touch, and I was just kind of like, hey, like, would you want to put out this record of like these two bands that don't even like really exist? You know, like now it seems like if someone was like, you know, hey, you want to put out like an Orchid Pig Destroyer record, it would seem like a cool thing. But I think at the time he was kind of like, I don't know, man, I guess. You know? So that worked out. Then for the other splits, Combat, Chris Norris was another like friend of mine that I'd had for years that I had met and been in touch with when I was living in Alabama. He had done artwork for me for a record I had put out, and like I had met him at a show when he was touring, like roadieing for ASSUC, and like so we had like a friendship, and he would like send me like practice tapes of his bands, and like so Combat came together, and it was just kind of like, hey, do you want to do like like you have this band, I have this band, like we could do like a split kind of thing. So that was again pretty organic. And then I think the Encyclopedia of American Traders split, I think that was pitched to us by Chris from Witching Hour. We played a show with them, which I can't remember if it was before. I think it was right before the idea of the split came together, but I'm not sure the timeline there. But they had a 7-inch out, and we were like, yeah, like this band's cool. But they were the band that we probably had the least like we didn't really know them. Like we played that one show with them, maybe another time, but maybe just that one. But I mean, they were a cool band. And you know, Witching Hour was putting out cool records, and so it was kind of like, yeah, like this seems like a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
And then Jerome Stream, I mean, we were sort of like two peas in a pod, you know, like we were playing with them like all the time. Like they were the first band that like when I think I saw them before we played a show with them. I can't remember what the first show I saw them play was, but I think it was something in Providence, but I don't know if we played it. But they were kind of like, it was kind of like, holy shit, like this band's sick. And they're like the band that feels like most akin to kind of like what I want to try and capture. They're a different band, obviously, but like in terms of like the intensity, like especially like live, it was like super intense and like dissonant, but like catchy, like riffs. And like, you know, I was just kind of like, I think we were all pretty like blown away by them, and like became really good friends with all of them, toured with them a bunch, and, you know, played a ton of shows with them. So it was just kind of like, you know, that like the idea of doing a split with them was probably like the most like obvious, you know, choice.
Yeah, definitely meant like you guys meshed together well on that split. I agree with you with Jerome Stream. I'm not sure the first time, but I know I saw him up in New Hampshire with ASSUC and Reversal Man and Bastion up in Safe and Sound in Rochester, New Hampshire, and that might have been the first time. And then I saw him at the Tin Can Fest when I think like Seisha had played in Portrait and States of Skates played that show. And the first couple times I saw him, I was like, "Who's this tall guy that like screaming with no microphone?" And I can hear him plain as day. I was like blown away by seeing Jerome Stream for the first time.
Yeah.
And it was probably, I mean, probably similar. You saw him.
Yeah, they were always awesome.
Yeah.
For sure. And then I realized I had skipped the Red Scare split, but coming back to that, I forget exactly how that came together. We had done a show. Kip was sort of like, I don't know how I got his contact, but he became our contact for like playing in Knoxville, and he set up a couple shows and we played with them. And again, we were just like, this band is awesome. And we became friends with them, and, you know, later toured with them. And I don't remember exactly whose idea it was or like whatever, but it was, again, a pretty organic thing of like, oh, like, let's do a split with it. Like, you know, like they're a great band that we like, and we like all of them, and it just sort of made sense.
Yeah, I feel Red Scare is super underrated. They don't get enough
For sure.
love because everything that they put out is amazing in my eyes, and I definitely feel like they're rated in
Yeah, they're one of those bands that's like you play with on tour, you don't know who they are beforehand, and you see them and you're just like, holy fuck, like that band was awesome. Like, which doesn't happen that often on tour. So when it does, it's like you're really just like, damn, like that was sick. So I think we were all definitely like super impressed with all of them, like the musicianship and just like the band overall.
Yeah. Now being friends with Pig Destroyer, that was that relationship how you put out Explosions in Ward 6, the CD on Clean Plate? Is that kind of because you guys were friends and you put out the split? Is that kind of how that worked out for you?
Yeah, exactly. And you're really gonna challenge my memory, but I think I only put out vinyl on that. I don't think
you only put out the vinyl.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you did put out the CD, but
no, I don't think there is a CD. I think there's some reissue on Relapse or something now, but
yeah, I had the CD, but I don't know who put it out. It was like
maybe I did put out a CD. I don't know. I hate CDs.
For some reason, I thought Clean Plate put out the CD.
CDs are painful. Maybe I've just blacked out that I put out a CD of it as well, but I don't think so. I don't know. I definitely put it out on vinyl.
And still talking.
But yeah, it was the same thing because it was just like before, like I don't know, like they probably still played like less than 10 shows when I was like, I want to put out your record because they were sick. Their demo was sick.
Yeah,
we played with them. They were sick. It was just kind of like.
Yeah, it was like a no brainer right there.
Definitely. Yeah, exactly. Like if I ask, Scott says yes. Like yes, this is cool. So,
speaking about like we were talking about Orchid, what is your favorite album in your own opinion? What was your favorite album that you guys put out? Whether it be a full whether it be the full lengths or the splits, what's like most the one that's most important to you?
Almost, I don't even know. I mean, I don't listen to. I don't know the last time I listened to Orchid. So I don't know if I have a favorite. I think that working on Chaos Is Me, probably just because it was the first album that I ever recorded, or like it felt really like kind of like holy shit, like we're doing this kind of thing. So I think that felt like important in a different way, like personally.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily like the music felt more important, but it was just kind of like this threshold that I was crossing of like doing a full length and like really trying to like invest myself in this band. I don't know what's best.
Yeah. Well, I
can't say.
I was telling Jay, Dance Tonight, Revolution Tomorrow is by far my favorite one. I know a lot of people will give me shit about that because Chaos Is Me is untouchable to a lot of people. But that one is my personal favorite. I think as you guys went on, the music just to me got better and better and better, and I was very sad when you guys like called it quits, because the self-title was fucking amazing too, and I just feel like you guys were like this machine that was getting stronger and stronger as you went on. And,
I think we started losing some strength as we went on.
I mean,
not musically, but in terms of like our ability to be a band. But I mean, I think in some ways, Dance Tonight might be like that recording session, which also included the Drome Stream split, and I think the Red Scare split, like, is maybe the right intersection of like the idea, like the furthering of ideas of like I think Chaos Is Me is like a little more like simplified, and that's probably why it has greater appeal. And I think self-titled, we were going like shooting bigger and bigger with like these ideas, and I'm sure that is like off-putting, or like it's not as like like widely appealing. And maybe like Dance Tonight is like the middle ground between like, you know, some of this reach, but like not too crazy, and you know, and still some of like the straightforwardness or more straightforwardness of the Chaos Is Me songs. But
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a rough approximation.
So when Orchid,
But I know that some of the later songs, I remember, I don't know which song or even which record, but like there's definitely some song that has like, you know, where I was like, oh shit, this song has like 11 riffs in it. And you know, like Chaos Is Me songs, you know, most of them probably have like, I don't know, 4 riffs or something. You know, like they're a little more I don't know, easy to follow, easy to bite.
so when Orchid ended, was Bucket Full of Teeth your next project, or was Ampere, like, were they kind of like simultaneous at the same time, or was it I'm not sure on the timeline of when that actually happened.
Yep. All these timeline questions from like, you know,
I know.
17 to 25 years ago are tough. The Ampere and Bucket Full of Teeth beginnings definitely like were pretty similar time and very close. Both were like after I finished college, and the other Orchid guys had all moved to New York. And so I can't remember the exact which came first, but they were pretty similar. Bucket Full of Teeth might have actually come a little bit beforehand, but I could be wrong about that. But I think maybe it did.
Yeah. I remember it was similar times because the show that I recorded, I feel like Ampere was playing right around that same time as well.
Yeah, and that was like pretty much near the end of Bucket Full of Teeth's life.
Yeah, because is it true that Bucket Full of Teeth only played 6 shows? Is that correct?
That's true. I mean, that was another studio project band, and like, you know, talking about grandiose ideas. Most of those songs were written by me being like, here's like some like trying to like think of like the most like outrageous attempts that I could have on like some sort of like hardcore power violence, whatever, you know, whatever I could stretch it to be like song. And that was like, at that point, Brad, who had left Massachusetts and was no longer in Orchid, at that point, he was back in Massachusetts. We were still friends. And, you know, it was kind of like, oh, like, why don't we do some new project together? And then Matt Wilga, who was playing drums in the Cancer Kids, you know, I recorded the Cancer Kids and met him, and it was kind of like, this dude's a sick drummer. Like, I think he was like the first person that I met. He was from Western Massachusetts, but at the time was going to school in Boston. But he was the first person that I like was friends with and was like, oh, he's like into the same kind of like power violence-y, like grindy stuff that I am, and can play blast beats and is like kind of on the same wavelength as me. Like I hadn't like encountered that person personally. So it was kind of like Brad and I were kind of like, maybe we could like ask him. Like he's like a pretty sick drummer, like seems like a cool dude, you know? Like,
Yeah.
So, and that the first 7-inch for Bucket Full of Teeth was written by like, we actually were practicing the songs and like had a handful of practices, but nothing too regular because unless I'm misremembering, I think Matt Wilga was living and going to school in Boston at the time. So he was commuting out. So we weren't like really practicing that much, but we had a handful of practices and then just decided to record those songs. But all the other stuff was all like recorded basically like while it was written. Like we would get together for a weekend or whatever, and I'd be like, here's this crazy dumb idea I have. Let's try and like cash it out into a song, and then you know, see where it goes.
Yeah. The music is very heralded by a lot of
I'm losing you.
like so many people love Bucket Full of Teeth, and I was just honored to be able to record it. I used to go to shows with my buddy Brian Asaro all the time. It was like me and him constantly going to shows back then. We tried to go to every single show possible and record as much as possible. And Matt Wilga had a double duty that night with the show that I recorded because Cancer Kids played right before you guys did. And speaking of Matt, he is in a couple other bands that you made as well, correct?
Like you mean like using Failures?
Yeah, Failures. And wasn't he in one other band as well with you?
He was another project band. He was in Succumb. I mean, he was in Torrington. We have lots of dumb project bands together.
Well, how many? Like, I was reading something. How many bands projects have you been in? Because I went all the way up to like 25. So how many? It's like over. It's over 25 now.
That sounds like you've counted more than I don't know. A lot. It depends what you're willing to count, probably.
I mean, I think you're the hardest working man in the hardcore punk community by far. You run
That's
your own label. I mean, you run your own label. You have your own recording studio. You've been in at least 25 band projects. Like, that's what I'm saying. You what you've done for the community
I appreciate it.
Is something unbelievable, and I think that's why everybody loves everything that you've done.
Well, that's probably stretching it, but
well, I don't.
But yeah, I mean, I don't really do the label anymore, but maybe it, it's not dead, but it's not awake. But I don't know. We'll see what
Megan just said Will Fest 2022.
Oh yeah, and Nat mentions Puker. Yes,
and Nat Puker also was wondering about where
Puker and Components exist. And Stop the Clock. There's lots of bands out
there. Nat wanted to know why we haven't talked about Dahmer yet.
That's a good question. I don't know because you haven't asked me about Dahmer yet.
Yes, I know. He wanted a full 40 minutes of Dahmer talk. So I know I'm disappointing him. I know.
I don't think I have 40 minutes of Dahmer talk to give, but I mean, I thought Dahmer was fucking sick. I mean, there was a time in my life, probably from, I don't know, somewhere around 96 to 2000 or so or beyond, where I was pretty much trying to just discover as much weird, not necessarily weird, but stuff that I was unfamiliar with, grind shit, just sort of this label in Europe will do it a trade, or this distro will do a trade, or Vacuum Mail Order has this and they say it's sick. I don't know what it is, but I'll buy it. Just lots of stuff like that. And Dahmer, I got that first 7-inch and it was just this band fucking destroys. So I just started writing them or calling them and just eventually I think I just asked them to put out a record in general, and I think it turned into the LP, which was a 7-inch that didn't work out, and then more songs. They were just kind of maybe you could put this out, and I was yeah, Dahmer is very cool. Would release, and that's I don't think there's much more to it than that. I do one funny thing about that LP, which did come out on CD. CDs moved slower. That CD I pressed through Furnace back when Furnace was kind of starting, and the dude from Art Monk Construction, I forget his name, maybe Eric was the main dude doing it. But anyways, they had to find they were like a broker. And the plant that they worked through, making CD packaging, refused to print that cover. And he was we had to find a whole new manufacturer. which I felt bad about, but he was like, you know, we probably would have had to cross this bridge at some point. So, you know, I'm glad we crossed it, but I was kind of like, I think it made me be extra like, am I making a mistake?
Now, what was the first release that Clean Plate did? What was the very first one?
The first release was the Pig Suck comp, the double 7-inch compilation. And actually, the first one we started working on was the Start a Riot compilation LP.
Yeah.
But that one took longer to come together. And somehow we had this dumb idea. I say we because for the first 3 releases, I was doing it with my friend who played in Laceration with me. But we had this dumb idea of like, this other comp is taking a while to come out. Or maybe we were trying to get the funds together to put out an LP, but we were like, let's put out a double 7-inch comp and like in the meanwhile, which doesn't really make any sense. But somehow that was what ended up happening, and it somehow worked out. But yeah, that was the first one.
Yeah, Pig Suck had Spaz and Mankind on it, and the Start a Riot one had Capitalist Casualties and
yeah, they were on both actually, but yeah,
and Code 13. I mean, those comps are great too. So I mean, you must have been happy putting out those first 2 comps to you know, the first thing you put out on your record label.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was in high school organizing those, and was just kind of like hitting up all these bands that I thought were sick, and basically, I mean, then it was just like calling people, like, you know, and just being like, hey, like I'm putting out this comp. At the time, I was like part of Punk Planet zine, so it was like I had some contacts, like I knew like the people like Dan at Profane Existence, so like I had kind of like an into like some of these bands, and was sort of like, I knew Chris from Spaz because he worked at Fat Records, and like I would call Fat Records for Punk Planet for like ads, and so like there was kind of this weird like, it was kind of like, oh, I kind of know some of these people, like maybe I can call them and they would like do the, you know, like whatever. And that's just kind of how it was all able to like come together, I guess, one way or another.
And with Clean Plate, what was some of your favorite releases? Because if I mean, a lot of people already know this, but I mean, the Jerome Stream Usurp split was huge. You put out Enemy Soil, Anton Boardman, Off Miners album. Wolves Sinaloa split. I mean, Daniel Striped Tiger, like Wasteland, like all kinds of crazy releases on Clean Plate. What was like your favorite one, or a couple of your favorite ones?
I'm really bad at favorites. I dread going into interviews that someone asks me my favorite of something. One, I don't know. But I don't know. I mean, maybe some of the Daniel Striped Tiger stuff, or the label kind of like evolved and like changed from like when I started it, it was just like, I thought doing a label would be cool. I was in Alabama, so like I really wasn't like seeing any bands. I was forming friendships with these people I was calling to like, you know, get them to be on the comp or something. But it wasn't like I didn't like really like know them, most of them well beforehand, you know, like so it was kind of just like, oh, like a label would be cool, like this band seems cool, like maybe they'll do a record, whatever, you know, like and then sort of like, I don't know, I got a little tired of trying to like, I don't know, like facilitate putting out something by a band that I thought was cool and like other people would like be into, or being like, this band, like their LP will probably be sick. Maybe I can put out that sick LP. I stopped thinking about it like that, and it was just kind of became like, these people are my friends and like they're making cool music. Maybe I can like help them put out their music. Which became like, you know, it was like kind of like a more meaningful experience. Not to say that the earlier records that were like more grindy stuff and whatnot
Yeah.
or crusty, like that I don't like them or that they're meaningless, but like whatever, putting out something by Jerome's Dreamer, Downstripe Tiger that I was like friends with and or like, like had this like long rapport with, I think it meant more to all parties involved to sort of like do it together.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess those records mean more to me, whether or not they're better or worse, or I don't know. Death to Tyrants would fit in that. Wasteland, like like a lot of like the later stuff would fall under this like category.
Yeah. Now, are you still active in putting out records now, or is it kind of just like in the back burner? Or is it still like present nowadays?
It's the backest of burners that I can have. Like to me, it's like for it to make sense for me to put out a record at this point, which financially I don't know if I would throw down for regardless, but it would have to be like something I felt was really great that someone else wouldn't put out, or like and that like I felt like somehow I could help like get into the world. But I feel like as the label is less of a thing and whatever, bands, like people discover bands organically online now, etc. Like I don't think that me putting out a record by any band can really do them honestly like much of a service at this point. So it's kind of like, I don't know, I'd be really hard pressed to think of what that situation would be, besides it being like maybe something that, I don't know, like a Ritual Mess kind of situation where it's like, I've made this thing. I don't even know if anyone else wants to put it out. I guess I'll put it out and see what happens.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. It's not, I feel like there's always a chance I could put out something else, but I don't know what it would take for me to actually do it.
I mean, and at the time when things were, you were running a lot of albums and doing bands and having Dead Air Studios going on. I mean, it must have been hard for you to juggle all these things, continuously for years and years.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of basically as the studio started being more busy, like the label started to like lose sort of like focus for me, in terms of like what I wanted to, or sort of like where my time and energy was going. Also, like by that time, like I'd put out enough records that didn't do well that it was like kind of like, destroying my finances.
Yeah.
Like quite literally. So it was kind of like, like a lot of DIY labels, I think, especially at that time, it was kind of like, and also like late 90s into early 2000s were very different than like, I don't know, 2005 and on in terms of selling records. Like, some of those records I was selling, like early records, I was selling like 2,000 copies of or something. And then it got to a point where it was like doing 500 seemed dicey.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's that I was putting out like worse shit or like, whatever. I think like a lot of labels were experiencing this, and, all it really took for me was putting out like an LP and a 7-inch or so that like I pressed like 1,000 or 2,000 of, getting like, not even like cocky, but it was just like other things were selling this well. So it was like, why not make 1,000 of these, like they'll sell. And then it's like you end up sitting on 700-800 or over 1,000 or something, and you're just kind of like, everything was kind of pressed and priced to basically like break even. Like I wasn't making money on the label.
Yeah.
So it was like putting out a couple of things that like no one bought, basically just like destroyed my ability to put anything else out.
Yeah.
Kind of like,
Now, do you think because of LimeWire and Napster and stuff like that, it kind of killed like that at that time?
I don't think so. I don't think that had anything to do with it. I don't know. I think that people more involved think that actually it was like more about like recession and stuff like that, and people just having less money. And also I think that like at the time and afterwards talking with like people like Kent McClard about it, I think that there started to be more and more records. And basically, I remember for a long time, Kent would tell me that he wasn't selling less records overall. Like he was still selling, like if you looked at total quantities for all releases, he was still selling the same number of records, but there were so many more like titles or whatever you want to call it that, you know, like each one with some exceptions, but each one was selling way worse than it would have like, you know, a year or 2 years or whatever prior, just because there was so much more going on
Yeah.
or being pressed, essentially.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But yeah,
I had a question about Dead Air Studios. I know
sure,
you've recorded not a million, but hundreds and hundreds of bands. And
sure.
was there any
You're
my
not gonna ask
two,
me about my favorite, are you?
two of my bands recorded with you back in the day, High School Sweethearts and the Golden Age of recorded, which was a great experience for me because High School
Cool.
Sweethearts beforehand had recorded with like a young engineer that was getting taught by the Godsmack guys how to record
Ooh.
music, and the demo was so botched, it was like so horrible, and I had to convince my guys, listen, we got to go to Will's the man, like we're going there, like,
I
and
appreciate that.
that's how that happened. But my question is, sorry, I went on a tangent for a second.
That's fine.
um,
Good tangent.
my question is, was there any bands that came to record at Dead Air that you were blown away by when they actually started recording, and you were like, holy shit, this band is like incredible? I know you've probably seen a lot of not so incredible bands also, but was there any bands that really like really blew you away?
Um, you know, these are the kind of questions that I suck at. But I mean, there were things like the Cancer Kids where it's like, you know, which caused me to like cherry pick Matt Wilga or something as a drummer. You know, there are things like that. You know, where certainly at least people in bands or whatnot, you know, where I was like, it's like, oh, like this person's like really talented or cool or, you know,
Yeah.
things like that. I don't know. And, you know, Deaths to Tyrants would fall under that category. You know, like when they recorded with me, like I think when they recorded, I hadn't seen them play a show, if I'm remembering correctly. I had recorded a prior band that Eric was in. But you know, like recording that, I was just kind of like, whoa, like this band's like crazy and sick. But I don't know. I'm probably like not remembering a million things, but like I feel like I don't really tend to think of it. Like a lot of times I don't even realize until like afterwards or something that like, oh, this is like cool or like whatever. I guess like Ringers would fall under that category too, who Ampere did a split with. But again, some of these are just like people that I knew that like came back and did some band and it was like, whoa, this new band's like kind of like a step above or something. But
Yeah.
I think kind of like just like seeing your first shows or something, some of like the impressions that you have from like earlier in life are like kind of like stronger than like, you know, like the millionth show you go to, you're maybe a little harder to be like blown away by like a life-changing experience. I think that maybe some of the bands that just I was unfamiliar with recording that, you know, like that I'm mentioning, they're just older, where it's like, as someone who was pretty new to recording, you know, I think those like stick in my mind a little bit more, but that's not to say that, I don't know, things of equal caliber and excitement haven't like, well, they haven't passed through recently during the pandemic, but that, you know, that they haven't in recent years passed through. It's just like, I don't really think about it in the same kind of way, I guess, or I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Now, have you ever gotten to the point in your life, in emotions, where you almost got burnt out by the scene and all this stuff? Because, like I said, you're one of the hardest working guys in this community. And have you ever felt like, you know, it's just all too much, and you got burnt out, and you need to, you know, step back and reprocess and then go forward, because it seems like you always have your hand in something, and it's incredible to me that you're such a hard worker, and like I said, I got burnt out for a while. I was going to shows from basically 87 to 90, like, I don't know, like actually probably 87 to like 2005, 6. And then I kind of got
Hmm.
burnt out on it. I started going to a lot of hip hop shows. And then in the past like 5 years, I started going back to going to heavier shows before the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, have you ever felt like you got burnt out by this and that you needed to take a step back?
Not burnt out. Like, I mean, it varies. I mean, there are times where it varies a lot, I guess. I think that it's common to do something where, like, at times I've been in 3 bands, some of which are just kind of like projects, but that are all like occasionally playing shows. And there might be like a month or two where it's like each one's playing a show or two or something. And it's kind of like a little overwhelming, or, like, but then there'll be times where it's like, I haven't played a show in 6 months, and it's kind of like, oh, that's kind of nice or something. Like, I feel like you definitely go through phases of, wanting to just like write music and like whatever, and like being kind of like, not like overplaying shows, but like less excited about it,
Yeah.
But I feel like it can also go the other way. Then it's like, then you start like playing a couple shows, and it's like, oh, this is like cool. I'm just like, I don't know, it's fun, I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I guess like to an extent that happens. I'm trying to think of other times. I think there's just kind of like any like long tour, it's like you can start to feel a little burnt out on, or like, coming like off the end of it, kind of like you kind of want to take like a breather of, like playing like, like, I mean, like a 4 or 5 week or 6 week tour. It's kind of like you get home and it's kind of like, well, you kind of have to like remember what life is like, but it's kind of like doesn't make you like necessarily want to like jump up and like play like a random, like a show, like, I don't know how to even say it, but like, like a show where you're kind of like, I don't know the other bands, or like who the person who's booking it, or, you're kind of like, where like normally you'd be like, yeah, why not? It kind of makes it a little harder to be like, yeah, let's like jump back in the van, like after I just got home and like play this like thing that I don't know anything about.
Yeah, just like some random person from like say Hampstead, New Hampshire. Hey, you wanted to play a show in this VFW, and you're like,
Right. Yeah, it's like that starts to seem less appealing at that time, but it all depends on like the time and place and like what else is going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the only other thing I can think of too is like, I mean, I think that towards the end of Orchid, when we actually, like when the popularity started to sort of like hit while we were a band, I think that, we started to get like whatever people that were like, we like the whole time we were a band, we like screened all of our own shirts and like, booked all of our own shows and stuff. And it was like, we started experiencing people getting frustrated of like, whatever, if we like ran out of shirts, people would be like bummed at us and stuff. And like, or, like we didn't play, like we couldn't play some show. And it was kind of like, I think that it was kind of like, we were reaching a point where it kind of was getting like awkward, or like kind of like it was becoming something a little different that like we were kind of like didn't know how to like deal with or whatever. And it didn't like, burnout isn't probably like the right word, but it was kind of just like, I don't like really know like what to do with it, or like, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was kind of overwhelming.
Almost like it felt like a job at the time, and not like
it didn't feel like a job, but it was just kind of like, I don't know, like it felt like people had expectations of us, or like that weren't real, or that were like hard for us to, it was just kind of like, whatever. We would go on tour and screen like go on a US tour and screen like 300 shirts or 400 shirts or something. And maybe by the end of it, we were like out of like mediums or something, like it was like,
yeah.
There's like something that we couldn't plan like 3 weeks in advance. And it was just kind of like, I don't know, like, I think that for us, it was just kind of like frustrating to be on tour and have people like express disappointment with us, and we're like busting our asses.
Yeah, you're like,
like
I slept 3 hours in a van, and you're mad at because I don't have a youth large.
and it was kind of like, yeah, it was just kind of like, I think things like that were just kind of like unexpected or like weird to process. But I don't know. That was like definitely towards the end.
Yeah.
And people, whatever, like wanting to be like more like interactive. I know like Jeff Garlick has like gone off about this, but like people like touching him when he plays and stuff. Where he's just like, stop touching me, like shit like that. It's just like, why are you so close to me? Like I don't know, just stuff like that where it started to be like a little bit like, what is this like becoming? Like I think we all wanted to be, we all want to, not that we were like, the point of the band wasn't to be popular, but obviously we were like, we wanted people to like the music we were making. And like, so like, I think that's the goal of, most bands is like, we're releasing this music. It'd be cool if people got into it and wanted to like see us play or whatever. But I think we started to hit a point of like, what are we like, there's now like these like, now there's like 200 people that want to like touch us when we play. Like what is like, not that 200 is even like a lot in terms of like, like a bit, but like when you're like trying to play like some house or something.
Yeah.
You're just kind of like, I don't like, is this really like what I signed up for? Kind of.
Well, I feel like I was talking about a reunion. I'm sure the huge deterrent for Jeff is, I mean, if you guys did a reunion tour, you think people were touching you back then at the end? It would be mayhem.
Yeah, we'd have to get him some protective shield.
Yeah, you'd have to have like a little, gated fence around you guys, because it would be, I feel like it would be insane if you guys got back together and did a reunion. Because watching that video that I did, and also somewhere I have the 8mm of the very last show. I think it was in Massachusetts, like a couple days after the Tin Can Fest. Or it might have been the day after, and that was just as crazy. It was like the crowd was like all over you guys, and like I said, if there was a reunion, it would be complete chaos.
I like your teasing it out. But yeah, I think to me, part of why I don't like reunions, and I think it's like kind of lame, is like, to me, it's like this shit is like a time and a place, and it's like, I don't know, like what you're saying is true. Like if we played a reunion now, it would probably have to be, I don't know, like somewhere like larger than a place that holds 200 people or something. And like, and I'm not saying this is like the only reason not to do a reunion, but it's like to me, Orchid isn't a band like that set out or like was made to play like some big ass club, like I have like no interest in that. And to me, it's like, I feel like reunions are like this weird like nostalgia trip for people who like missed out. It's like, and to me, I'm like, it's not my job to like fulfill your weird wish. Like this was a time and place. You weren't there. That's fine. That's life. Like, like I don't like, you have this like fantasy, but like the fantasy is not being in some big weird club and seeing the band. Like that's not like the cool thing. That's not even like real. You're not getting what you're being nostalgic for.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I feel like, and I don't want to do like a house reunion set of shows, but like, what I mean? But like, it would be more legit to like play like shows to 30 people in like people's basements or whatever, like that would be like like a real, like the more like authentic experience, or like what the band was like more. I mean, not like our, mission statement was like, we want to play to 30 people in basements, but like, I don't know. It's just all that shit's weird. And yeah, I don't know.
Well, basement shows are some of the funnest shows ever. All the basement shows that I've been to are amazing. Usually, like, and I've never, the funny thing is, I've seen fights at clubs and venues like that, but I've never seen a fight in a basement, which is crazy to me, at least on my part. And I've gone to, plenty of basement shows. It just seems more close knit,
communal. Yeah.
Yeah. And so So I'm pitching Orchid reunion basement tour 2022.
Basement tour, yeah, limited engagement. Tickets will be $200 a person for the limited basement
COVID
engagement.
test before you walk in the door.
What was that? Oh, COVID.
Yeah, COVID test before you walk in the door. I'll do
Yeah,
the
I don't
temperature
know.
checks.
I've seen some reunions and enjoyed them, you know, but I think that for the most part, I don't know. I'm happy doing what I'm doing now and don't feel a need to relive some like concept of like some glory day and which wasn't that glorious at the time, and you know, and fulfill someone's fantasy of what it might be like if they had like some time machine which doesn't exist. So
Yeah, and you
I
can
don't.
always watch the videos. There's plenty of YouTube videos of Orchid playing. So
It's true.
if people that haven't seen it, you know, I mean, I feel the younger people's like pain where they weren't part of it, but the people that were part of it is, you know what I mean. It is what it is, yeah. And like you said, the difference is like if like Jerome's Dream, what they're doing, they're making new music on top of like getting back together again, which is like I think is has been really great for them. And the new album that they put out, and now that Jeff is starting to scream again, which gives that aspect again of like the old stuff. I feel like what they're doing now is really, really good, and I'm glad to see them back, as well as Daughters. Like they took a big time off, and then all of a sudden they kind of changed their ways of what they were doing, and now they're like a super group now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of those things where it's like also reunions like make you question like the motivation or whatever, and I think that like at this point, like someone like Jerome's Dream seemed pretty like entrenched in being a band again, and like, you know, like whatever, you know, like I feel like they're doing it. It's clear that they want to be doing it and they're enjoying it and whatever. That's cool, you know, like. Whereas, you know, like some reunions seem like it's just like for the cash or whatever, or someone's bored or like their new band sucks, and then they're just like, oh, like I'll get the old band going again, like whatever, you know, like I don't know, but they're a weird thing.
Yeah, true. I'm half and half on it, on a lot of different reunions that happen. I had one question: who toured more, Ampere or Orchid? Was Ampere the one that toured the most? I feel like Ampere toured more.
That's a good question. I think Ampere did tour more. We each did a fair amount of tours, though. I'm not sure because Orchid did at least 4 tours. We did at least 2 East Coast tours. Maybe it was 2 East Coast tours and 2 full US tours, and Europe for 2 weeks. So I don't know. That was probably something like, let's say 8, 11. Let's say that was like 13, 14 weeks of touring or something collectively.
Yeah.
Ampere, we did the longest tour I've ever done, which was 6 weeks with Death to Tyrants. The only other U.S. tour we did with Sinaloa, which we did Cannonball Run style, we did the whole U.S. in 2 weeks.
Oof.
That was an experience. It worked out, so that's cool, but it was intense. So I don't know, that's 8. And we did a couple of East Coast tours at least. And we did like a month going to Australia and New Zealand and the West Coast. And we went to Europe twice for like 2 weeks each. So I think Ampere probably has like the edge a little bit.
Yeah.
By a couple weeks of touring, but both certainly got out there and pounded the pavement.
The greatest thing about you too is every band that you start kind of reinvents a different sound. Like Corrode is kind of like almost like like what I get from Corrode is kind of like a thrashier, older thrashier, like early DRI, but like a little heavier than that. You know what I mean? And
I love early DRI, so I'll take that as a compliment.
I mean, that's what the first time I heard you guys. That's kind of what it reminded me of. A little like thrashier, DRI, like older stuff, like Violent Pacification type stuff.
Yeah,
And then like Vaccine is more of like a crusty sound, like a heavy crusty sound. Failures is more hardcorey to me, like and I just
Yeah.
hats off to you for always reinventing a new sound. It's not always like, if I hear a band, I'm not like, oh well, Will's in that band. It's the guitar sounds different, you know what I mean? And you're not
Absolutely.
all stuck in the same type of riffs and stuff like that. And like I said, hats off to like always reinventing a newer sound that from you.
Thanks. I mean, I feel like that's part of the challenge or what keeps it interesting, like playing music, is just being like, oh, like I haven't done this before, or like what's like something that seems like inspiring to like explore, or, like what's a new idea that I have of like, what if like did this, but this way or something, like what happens when I try that? And sometimes it doesn't actually work out how you think. It becomes something else, but which is fine and obviously part of the creation process. But yeah, to me, I'm always like, it's kind of like, oh, like this new project could be something else. Like it could be something like this, or like this sound of like these other bands is inspiring to me. Like what's some way that I can like try and like harness some of these ideas into something that's like my own or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, currently, what band projects have you got going on right now? Obviously, Corrode is still a band, correct?
Corrode is still a band. We have an LP of stuff almost finished, or pretty much finished, but the pandemic has destroyed our plans for recording and whatnot. So that's all kind of like waiting patiently on hold. There's Longings, which has had an LP finished for a little while. That's taken us a long time to actually finish. And then there's No Faith, which is like another project band, where, I mean, that's pretty much all just Matt McEwen and I, and or not. It's not only us. There's other people involved in the record and on prior records, but we're kind of like the non like rotating cast.
Yeah.
And we have like a ridiculous amount of material that's like kind of in different stages, but again, like nothing has been like worked on. But those are the kind of thing the bands, or those are kind of the bands that have things like in process for resuming whenever.
Yeah.
Whenever.
Now, Dave from Burned by the Sun, is he part of No Faith? Is he like the current, like the drummer of No Faith?
No, he was on the second LP, but he's not on the new stuff that we worked on. We hit him up to do it again, and he was down, but he had like some personal conflicts and whatnot, and like basically it just couldn't work out, and which is fine. I mean, now like so much time has passed, it's like who even knows what could have happened. But that's it. We had our friend Jackie play drums on it. Jackie, most well known probably for being in like Eurochromes and other bands, who doesn't play drums in that, but is a fantastic drummer. But so he played drums on it and did an awesome job. But yeah, that was recorded, I don't know, like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The drums. And so it's kind of like all of those No Faith records have been kind of like this process of like slow assembly. And this one has been the same and now has been on a extra long hiatus in its slow assembly. So once that resumes, there'll be an additional slow assembly.
Yeah.
Who knows when it will be done and whatever.
I know, like I've been dying to see live shows. It's who knows when it's going to happen, or safely. Because I mean, venues alone, how are they going to make any money if they're doing 12% capacity or 20% capacity?
Right.
Who's safe anyways going in there? Like who's going to be like, all right, I feel safe going in there anyways. So it must be hard for you not playing live for over a year. And in all honesty, I think it's going to be 2022 where things like hopefully like you'll see more shows happening.
Normalcy might resume.
Yeah.
I would tend to agree.
and like I said, there might be more basement shows now because of like venues in Boston have started to dry up, and you know, once ballroom in Somerville, that's not a place now.
Yeah.
Been,
I think there's a million questions that, like, Megan and I talk about this all the time, but it's just like, what places will still exist where you can even play? Not only that, but like, how can anyone even book a tour when there's, for one, the lack of potential venue, for two, you know, like the lack of like what could happen like while you're out on tour, you know, like and who like feels comfortable like going to show, like there's like all these like million variables that it's like pretty impossible to predict. But I agree, I don't feel like we're like around the corner from shit being how it was.
I mean, I see bands booking stuff like now, that huge fest is it in Alabama, that where like Converge and Pieball and all those bands, what I forget the name.
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't name of it either, to be honest. But I know what you're talking about.
I'm like, I saw all those bands and I'm like, oh my god, they like, it's pretty. I think they're talking October, and I don't know, like me personally, I'd be scared to like go there.
I don't really get it. I mean, I get that some people like the bands are more like, not like the band is their job, but it's a source of income for them or whatever. And I realize that, like, you know, obviously this year has been bad for anyone whose source of income relies on playing music. So, you know, I get that people are probably eager to get back out there, but I don't get like committing to something that, seems so
risky.
I don't fucking know.
It's so risky. It's so risky. I just
like, I have no idea what's gonna fucking happen. So
exactly. Usually,
like I was just saying the other day, I was like, I can hardly imagine being like inside with someone else that I know right now. So like, it's like beyond that, like the step after that, like I don't know, like I can't even. It's too far removed to even for me to start like imagining at the moment. Sadly,
I'm in agreement with you totally, definitely. I don't want to keep you for too long, so usually at the end I do a little, you know, rapid fire questions at you.
Oh god, no favorites.
I'll try not to. It's gonna be a couple favorites though, but
oh god,
I mean, you can just pass on them or whatever. I ask the same questions to everybody.
Okay.
Well, the first question is, if you've been listening to any new bands and you have suggestions for somebody, like newer bands within the past like 2-3 years, do you have any suggestions for anybody that should listen to a certain newer, heavier band?
Heavier. These are good questions. I don't know. I don't know if they're newer. Like I was thinking yesterday or 2 days ago that Ukiah Drag was a really good band. I feel like it's kind of gotten like a little forgotten about in time, or at least I haven't seen anyone like or heard anyone mention them in a while. But newish. I like Milk Music. I don't know. Sile is cool. Other bands I'm probably forgetting. I don't know.
I mean, did you like the like new? Did you like?
I'm trying to be rapid.
Did you like the newer?
Maybe I don't know how this works.
Did you like the newer wave of stuff like Frail Body and you know, For Your Health or Foxtails or stuff like that? Is that something that you listen to? That those newer bands that are kind of like even Soul Glow, which is amazing. I think Soul Glow is fucking so good.
It depends. I mean, a lot of stuff. One of the sort of maybe not problems, but realities of like mastering a lot of like newer bands and stuff is that like a lot of my like vision of like new stuff or like viewpoint is kind of limited to what I listen to like working on it. And so like some of the stuff that I haven't worked on, I just haven't like had the chance to check out, probably because like after working and like listening to hardcore and aggressive music, I'm usually like, oh, I'm going to put on Neil Young or something. I'm not like, oh, what's this like new like terrifying band sound like? I'm like listening to Brian Eno or something. So,
Yeah.
so I don't know. So I don't like. Yeah. So there's some bands that just like because they haven't crossed my path, I just haven't. I'm just not necessarily aware.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. All right. So my first question is, which it's a favorite question. I hate to do this to you, but
Oh God.
favorite New England punk hardcore band for you all time?
I have no idea. Um, Favorite New England punk hardcore band all time. I have no idea.
I hear a lot. I hear a lot of. I hear a lot of SSD. I hear a lot of Converge. I hear a lot of the Daughters. I hear a lot of those answers for that. I was a big SSD guy. That was the first show I ever went to when I was like real young. So they're probably like.
I mean, SSD's awesome. I just don't know if they're my favorite of all time.
Yeah.
I don't think I can answer this question.
All right.
In a way that's truthful, because I don't actually know what the answer is.
All right. My second question: what was the first punk hardcore show you attended?
I was warned that you asked this question, and I was kind of debating what the answer was. I feel like I have two answers. One is after I moved to Alabama, I went back to California and visited a friend there, and his older brother was like more into like things than either of us were, and there was this local band there called Jungle Fish, and I went to a show with them to see that band, which I think was just in like a VFW kind of hall or something, but I didn't know anything about punk shows or anything at the time, but somehow it didn't register to me. I was like, I'm seeing this band at this place, but it wasn't like I'm going to like a punk show that like is, I don't know. It was something, but it wasn't, I feel like it wasn't in some ways the first show I went to, but I was there. And then living in Birmingham, I went to, there was a tour, not many tours came through. And I was young and didn't have, transportation or ways to get to shows anyways. But there was a tour that was Buzz Oven and Three Finger Spread, a band you don't hear many people talk about, but I had their record. Probably still do, I think. And they toured together, and they played at this small club in Birmingham that I tried to get my friend to go to, but his parents wouldn't let him. And I think I had just turned 16, so I could drive myself there, and went to the show by myself, my first show. And that was definitely like weird. I remember Buzz Oven has like become, like a well-known band.
Yeah.
They were certainly, that was like when their first record, To a Frown, was out, which I had and really liked.
Yeah.
But, this was when their first record had come out, playing in Birmingham. And in my mind, there was, I think, like 10 people there, and at least 3 of them were skinheads, which I knew very little about, other than that, like, I was intimidated and like 16 years old.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they were sharps, but like still, I didn't know like what their deal was.
Yeah.
But anyways, also fun, or like when I think about the show, which I think maybe only those 2 bands played. I don't even remember if the local band played. I kind of think no. Actually, local band Nail might have played. It might have been the first time I saw them. They were kind of a sludge band.
Yeah.
Anyways, Buzz Oven played, and the opening of their album, To a Frown, which is a great record still, has this sample that I knew at the time. There was like this like very cool ominous sample, but they played, it was like how they started their set was like with feedback and this really loud sample, and the sample is like welcome to violence, the word and the act. And I was like I don't know where I am. Like I'm like a child with these skinheads, and I have like no idea what's about to happen. nothing really happened, but they were good. But
Yeah.
but it was kind of like this, like do I really know like what I've gotten myself into?
I know, especially going by yourself. Going by yourself,
Like I didn't
you
know
probably
anyone else
move
at the
back a little
show.
bit once you heard
Yeah, I
that.
was just kind of like, ah.
That's great.
But, yeah.
All right, my second one is another favorite question, of course.
Oh, God.
All time favorite punk hardcore show you played, or it could be a couple that really meant something to you. I mean, there's got to be a couple memorable shows that you remember, Ampere or Orchid.
Unreal. I don't know. Off the top of my head, Ampere did the 10-year anniversary show that was like kind of special, and Funnily Wasteland and Death of Tyrants played that show, and those were kind of reunions. But despite all my shit talk about reunions, but those shows that show felt special in a way that was like, like a bunch of friends coming together, and it was like really fun. It was kind of like this big event. So that's in a list of favorites. What else? I remember Orchid played in California with Gasp and Volume 11. And I remember, like, to me, that show was just kind of like those bands, they took it to another level that, like, I hadn't really seen before then. And it was kind of just like, I don't know. It was cool. And those bands are cool. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if those are favorites or not. Those are shows I played that randomly come to mind.
And now I have only couple more
favorites.
I know you're hating this, but
couple more favorites.
I have to ask because like I said, I put everybody through this.
God.
What was your all-time favorite punk hardcore show you attended, watching, playing? You went to see a band, and it was like one of your favorite shows that you had actually seen.
I don't know. No idea.
All right.
I just don't. I think my problem is other people seem to think about like these things. I don't know if they do it in their spare time, or like they're like, that was really like, they like make a top 10 list. They're this is like the ultimate like time I ever had at a show. Like I just do not do this.
I mean, it's tough for me because
it's not part of my personality.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone to a million shows too, and it's tough for me to pin down like what was my all-time favorite show. It's just I love throwing out these like kind of weird questions. My next question.
I'm just trying to even think. I just have no idea.
Fair enough. My next question. What was the last movie you watched? I'm a huge movie guy. I always ask this. What was the last movie?
We watched a movie last night that I fell asleep during, and I forget the name of because it's just like Timmy or something. It's about a guy who's abducted by UFOs.
It was that thrilling you fell asleep, huh?
Yeah. It was not a very well made documentary about an interesting event.
Fair enough. And my final question. Well, actually, I got. This will be my.
How many more favorites are you gonna ask?
Yeah, no more favorites. Okay. I'm a huge hip hop guy, like 90s hip hop for me. If you've been listening to hip hop, what have you been listening to? Whether it be old stuff in the 90s, early 80s, or I don't know if you like nowadays hip hop. Have you been listening to any hip hop?
I admittedly do not listen to much hip hop. If I do, I'll probably like put on like Public Enemy or something like that, or maybe NWA. Those are like the like ones that I'll like sometimes be like, now's the right time for this. but that's honestly about it.
Yeah.
I don't.
Two bands that are amazing, though. I mean, I was a huge Public Enemy fan. I want, as crazy as Flavor
Yeah,
Flav was.
they're
I didn't
amazing.
know he was so wild back then, but I was like, I was like wanted to be like Flavor Flav when I was in high school. I was like, oh, that guy's the coolest. He's got the clock and like he dances cool. And
Yeah.
I loved Public Enemy and their message, Chuck D's message and stuff
Yeah.
like that. It was just they were
I
really.
mean, that's obviously part of the appeal to me with Public Enemy. Public Enemy, like I listen to and I'm like, this feels and sounds so real to me, and like honest, I guess is what I mean, more than like real. Like
like a conscious rap.
that I like connect to it. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not saying there's not other stuff like that. I'm not super well versed, but
Yeah, I mean it's almost like the NWA. They're not just gangster rap. They were talking about even way back then, like police brutality and other like issues that were going on. They weren't just like a gangster rap like band that was trying to sound all tough and talk about the
right.
stuff. That's why NWA is like one of my favorites as well.
Yeah. Cool. I side note, I did see Public Enemy on tour. Funnily with the U2, the Zoo TV tour. For some reason, my family never went to concerts, or like concerts weren't a thing, but for some reason my dad thought we should go see U2, who I don't think any of us liked. But anyways, it was cool because Public Enemy was like one of the opening on that section of the tour. Public Enemy was one of the opening acts.
Yeah.
And I was stoked on that, and they were awesome.
Now, was your dad disappointed when Public Enemy played? Because obviously,
no,
I didn't know if he was like a huge U2 fan and like those.
No, I legit don't know why we even went. I don't think anyone cared about U2. I think it was kind of like, I literally don't know. I mean, I know that tour was kind of like this whole like spectacle, and I think was kind of like presented as like this. There was like moving cars on stage, like. I mean, moving, I feel like they were on cranes or like some weird shit. I don't know. It was presented as some sort of like next level, like concert experience.
Yeah.
And maybe that was the motive. I honestly have no idea why we went to this concert. But the cool part of it was that I saw Public Enemy.
Yeah. I saw Public Enemy a long time ago. I think it was like late 80s on the, it was like a Def Jam tour with,
cool.
I think, LL Ed played and Beastie Boys when they first came out.
That's cool.
Like License to Ill had just dropped and it was a pretty good tour. I'm not sure if I forget who else had played that tour.
It was like a very good tour.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was definitely crazy, and I don't know.
That's cool.
Just throwing it out there, but like I said.
Sick.
I don't want to keep you too long, so I want to say thank you so much.
I've lost you.
I know you don't do this too often, and I really, really appreciate it. I've just been trying to talk to people that I admire in the scene. I've been listening to, punk and hardcore for the longest time, and my final question is a couple. What do you think of the word Screamo? I always ask this. I had to throw this out there because you guys are like.
It's a dumb word that I have gotten used to.
and what
I mean, I don't think Screamo, the word, existed the whole time Orchid was a band. I think that I first heard it on some Ampere tour. And then again, that was like how I heard like Scrams or something. Like someone was, I remember some like kid who seemed like they were like 15 or something in California being like, what do you think of the word Scrams? And I was like, what? And then he like scampered off with like a slice of pizza or something. And I was just like, I don't know what's happening. And it wasn't until like a year later where I was like, that's a word. Like this has become a word.
Yeah, I was totally oblivious to Scrams. Somebody said Scrams, and then they put all these bands together, like City Caterpillar and Page 99 and Orchid and Jerome's Dream, and I'm like, Scrams. I'm like, what the hell is Scrams? And then with like Screamo, when I saw you guys playing back then, and Seisha and stuff like that, that was never a word. It was just hardcore or punk, like hardcore punk bands. That's all it was. And then all of a sudden it came into this like crazy thing. And now everybody's Screamo,
I know.
yeah, like asking Alexandria could be Screamo. You could talk to a random person and be like, oh,
Yeah.
you like they'll ask you, what do you listen to? Oh, I listen to, hardcore Screamo type of stuff. Oh, you like Breaking Benjamin? I do too. I'm like, no, I'm not talking about that kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just always throw that out there all the time.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It was kind of a funny tongue-in-cheek term at the time, but I felt like emo violence was around at that time, and I feel like that's not like a term that I felt like, I am emo violence, but I at least like understood like both the tongue-in-cheekness of it and like the kind of concept of it, and could relate to these things. But that was the furthest I would ever, although I don't think I ever self-described anything as emo violence, but because of the tongue-in-cheekness. But I do. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd like it to maybe a better term than scrams.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
If I had to choose one, it would be emo violence.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Definitely, 100%. 100%. Like I said, thank you so much for doing this. I'll let you go now. I took way too much of your time. I really appreciate you doing this. And like I said,
this is my first time going live.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I know you don't do this too often, so I felt honored that you would actually agree to coming on. I've talked to a bunch of
Thanks
people.
for asking me.
I've talked to a bunch of people, and next week I'll be speaking with Jordan from the Blood Brothers. So I'm just trying to talk to as many people as I admire in the scene as possible until things get normal, and then I can't talk to everybody because they'll be touring or recording or doing stuff like that. So it's a perfect time for me to do this, and like I said, I appreciate your time. Well,
that's cool. Yeah, thanks for asking me. It's a good time.
All right. Keep in touch. Like I said, you need anything, reach out, and let's stay in touch.
Cool. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.
All right.